Okay, so here we go. As I said, we are behind schedule because of some, of course, necessary timeouts. Today we will be finishing up with the JavaScript. Okay, so instead of 20, it may go to 22nd. Yep. Yeah, looks like that. So instead of 20, yeah, there will be 2 days more. And then of course, you can still submit your project by end of the July, probably 31st. And in the meantime, probably on the second week, you will all be going to, or you will at least be starting to go to the marketing as well. Still, I'm not confirmed, but that's usually happens. A week after your training, you go to marketing so that you have enough time to prepare for your interviews, for your project as well, and if you want to brush up your technologies. So, of course, that's enough time for the marketing. And of course, if you want more time, you can ask each and marketing team regarding the delay in your own marketing. Otherwise, I think usually it's 1 week after the training. So you should be good with that. Any doubt? Before I start giving a recap of what we did on Friday, and then try to finish JavaScript today. So let me know if you have any doubt. I can surely go over that. So we have one. When will we get to see our project reviews? Within a day or two. Today I'm a little busy with my project or company work and some other work, so by Tuesday you should be having it, I think. And yep, if we finish, of course we will finish JavaScript today. So tomorrow and on Tuesday you will be having a backend training. So Java guys will come to me. Of course, at the same time, there are 2 .NET guys, and I talked to Naren, the .NET trainer, and he will be informing me tomorrow afternoon something about regarding the timings and how many hours he needs. Probably he's just one short guy, so he will just finish in one training or something. If you still want to come to my training, then of course it will be at 6:30 usual time, Eastern time, for the Java. So doesn't matter. And then after that we will spend 2 days in jQuery, and then we'll start AngularJS after that. And then of course 4 days are enough for Java, AngularJS, including the weekend. And then on the 22nd we will be finishing up with the build tools, as well as build tools including Grunt, which depends on Node.js or NPM, and then other testing tools like Protector, which also depends on the Node.js platform. So question, just to be clear, are we still allowed to use Node.js for the backend? Yep, if you can implement Node.js, I don't mind. I have things to run. I have entire setup for the Node.js backend as well. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead, but I will be taking just the Java part, because that's what usually most of the developers have idea about. And then also a few of the .NET guys will go there. If you want to do in PHP or in some other language, I don't care. The only condition is your backend should be able to accept a JSON object, and it should respond with a JSON object. That's it. Okay, so without going into the details, of course we will be starting tomorrow the backend, but before that we have to finish JavaScript. So on Friday, in our last class, I went through Ajax, and of course before that I went to a few of the DOM manipulation API available via pure JavaScript, as well as few of the global functions and properties. And then I talked about Ajax as well. So I'm gonna recap Ajax. So of course it's asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Nobody uses XML these days. It's just the JSON all the way around. And of course, using Ajax, we can send data and get response from the server asynchronously, meaning your JavaScript will not wait for response to be received, and it will carry on executing next functions. Of course, whenever the response comes, the handler will be automatically called. So, but that's asynchronous. That's why it is asynchronous. Important thing to understand why it is called asynchronous. It behaves similar to what your set timeout and set interval, meaning something will happen in the future, and that's why you will carry on executing the next task without waiting for the response. That's that's how JavaScript will handle your AJAX response. Then, of course, without interfering with the display and behavior of the existing page, if let's say it was asynchronous, then of course your execution will wait for response to be received and then only move forward with next set of instructions or next set of lines of functions or whatever you call it. But since it is asynchronous, it will not wait for response before executing next lines. So that's why it will not interfere with the behavior of the existing page. You can just go on working on some other things as long as the request is processed on the server, the response is getting returned, everything. It won't affect the users or anything. And that's why it's important, because comparing it with the full page refreshes, as soon as you put refresh, the entire page is blocked. You cannot do anything on that page as soon as the page is refreshing. So that's good behavior as far as using AJAX is concerned. Of course, it uses JavaScript and one special object, the XML HTTP request object, or in short, we call XHR object. We've gone through that, and of course, we have seen how to create XHR object. And now this is one issue where you have to be prepared for cross-browser issues if you are trying to write AJAX using pure JavaScript. So of course, you have to figure out whether XHR is available from the browser, which is the W3C recommended one. So of course, if it is available, take it or create instance from there. If it is not, check for the ActiveX object, and there are also two varieties of ActiveX objects, probably depending on some versions of IE, and then just get anyone which suits your requirement. So of course, these are Microsoft based implementations of XHR, and probably that's why the different name. This is the W3C recommended one, which is implemented by most of the better browsers. So once you have the XHR instance, what you do, you open or you set up your request object. You say, okay, what type of request are you asking? If it's GET, then of course you will provide URL along with the query string, because all the parameters that you want to pass to the server in a GET request are put on the URL itself. And then you say make it asynchronous, meaning your JavaScript doesn't want to wait for the response to come, and then in that case it will go on executing other things after this AJAX call. And then you send, that's it. And since it's a GET request, you can just put null, or you can even keep it empty, doesn't matter. And then of course we talked about how GET request behaves. Of course it has issues with the caching. So if you send same request again and again, your browser may cache the responses. So we'll figure out how to avoid caching on the GET request. Post requests are never cached by the browser, so you are safe in that case. Again, whenever your user input contains some sort of special characters, always use encode URI component. Doesn't matter whether it's a GET or post. I will just comment out, or I will just put here post as well. So it doesn't matter whether it's a GET or a post. You have to make sure that you are encoding the special characters, the ones that you are sending as part of the request parameter. Now we also saw how to handle post request. Of course, in case of post, you specify the type is equals to post. You don't have any request or query parameters in the URL. So where are those? So they are passed as the request body in the send method, using the same form URL encoded method, meaning name of the parameter, value of the parameter, ampersand, separated, different things. So that's how you can handle it. But of course you have to set the header as well, which is content type, and this is the default one which all of the servers on the backend are accustomed to handle. Because if you try to send something else, which we will learn tomorrow, in that case your backend servers are not that adept as of now to understand application/JSON or application/XML or anything for that matter. They know how to handle form URL encoded, and I'm talking about Java and .NET servers. So of course because this is this is what they have been handling so far for the last 20 years or so. So they know this stuff. So that's why we are sending in the same way in AJAX as well. Now once you have sent the request, how to handle the response? Of course there is one event on that XHR object, and the name is this, ready state change, and whenever that event occurs, this handler will be called, and this is handler defined here. You just wait for the ready state equals to 4. In the next page I will show you what are the different ready state codes from 0 to 4, and then you say when it is 4, then I mean everything is good. The response is received by the browser and it is available to process for yourself. Now you check whether the status is 200, meaning everything was okay on the server, and server returned the response status equals to 200, meaning okay. And then of course you can process. So assuming it was a JSON string, because it's our server, we know what it will be returning. So we know, assuming it's a JSON string, we convert or we pass it to a JSON object or JavaScript object, and then just use the dot notation or the bracket notation to traverse through that object, and then use whatever or however we want. So that's the, I think we saw an example of this as well. Open recent, it should be somewhere here, demo. So that's what we saw. Of course we didn't do anything here except on the ajax.js we said okay, execute this function after 5 seconds, just to mimic that it is after the page refresh, not along with the page refresh or at the bootstrap. So yep, we executed it after 5 seconds. After we learn about the events, we will execute once you click the button, the same thing. We'll come back to it. So of course that's what we did. We created the XHR object, we sent a request to our own server, and then of course we waited for the ready state change to fire, and then we supplied our own handler for that. So that's how we have handled it. Now again, I think we saw how it was working, so that's good. Let's move on to the new part. So what are the ready state codes? So of course there are 5 different codes from 0 to 4. The only time we check, or only time which it is good to execute your code, is when ready state is equals to 4. So what are the other codes? Well, the first one say request is not even being initialized so far. So it is even before sending the request, right? And then the first one is okay, request was sent and server has started sending you the data, and then you are in the process, or not you, the browser is in the process of downloading that data from the server. And then 2 is when the entire data from the server or the entire response from the server has been downloaded or loaded. Number 3, when browsers say, okay, I have processed some necessary things on this data, now it's yours. Yours means your developer, JavaScript developer. And then on the 4, it says everything is finished, it's safe to go. So these are the 5 different codes. Of course, I think only last 2 are available to you. Let's see, because we can see actually. Lab demo Ajax. So we want to see how many times this guy is being executed, right? So let's just print here. Because this guy will be called multiple times depending on any change on the ready state, which will change from 0 to 4. But your code will not be having access to all of these codes or these statuses or whatever you call it. So we will figure out how many that we can reference. We'll just look over this, print, and then you will see it will send an Ajax request after 5 seconds. So of course you can see that okay, there were 2, 3, 4. So codes number 2, 3, 4 you can access, not the 0 and 1 from your UI, or the call will not be or this where is this here, this function, this handler will not be called for 1 and 2, but still it is being called for multiple codes. So that's why you have to wait for the 4th, meaning everything is processed and it's ready for you to play with. Now that was one thing that I wanted to discuss. The next one is what happens if there is some communication error between your client, which is your browser, and your server. So if that happens, then this guy XHR instance can throw some exception, because let's say your request is being sent, the connection has been established, and then the request has been sent to the server, and in the meantime something happened in the middle, server or client both got disconnected, or anyone got disconnected. In that case, if you try to use HTTP request, well, it will throw you some exception. So how to handle that? Well, just put that into try catch. Safe way, always put that into try catch, and then if something goes wrong, you will not be breaking your code. So that's the only thing that we did here. Just put that any reference or HTTP request into the try catch. That's it. One more thing that I was talking about, the caching issues, because all of browser may cache repeating GET request. If you are sending same request multiple times, then browser will say, well, you are sending same thing to the server, I'm just gonna cache the response. So in that case, it will, although you will be making an AJAX call to the server, your browser will say, stop it. I already know what you are requesting. I already have the response from the previous call. I will just use it, give it to you. I won't even call server. So that's what caching happens. So if you are using GET request and with the same same URL and parameters, you may be having issues with this caching, which is implicit from the browser. So how to avoid this caching? Well, you can do two things. First, on the Java, let's say you are working with the Java backend, and similar will be there in case of your .NET as well. So every Java backend, if that's a web application, it has access to HTTP servlet response or HTTP response. And then there you can set header, and you just say cache control property, and then all these three values, which you are just asking browser, do not store anything from this request or response, do not cache anything, and every time you have to come to me to validate anything, or you have to come to me, don't just assume that you can cache everything. So three different values for some reason, and that's what you are, or your server is instructing the browser to do. Now in the time that you may not have access to this server side, then of course you can do from the JavaScript side as well. So how to change the URL every time you request something new? Well, you can send some bogus parameter which is changing every time. So for example, what is the best way, or what is the best parameter that is changing every time? Well, that's the time, right? So that's what you can do. After every request you can append a question mark, and then, or you can just send some garbage number, and that has to be unique, of course, unique from the previous, or since the previous request. So you can just depend on the date object in JavaScript. So here we are just asking for the time, which is a number since the 1st of January 1970 epoch time. So yeah, you can just append it to your URL, and then every time you request something new, it will be a new request, so browser will not be able to cache it. So that's how you can handle it. And of course, since you are passing as a parameter or as some value after question mark, then of course in that case your server doesn't understand this, so you are safe. Your server will not be accessing this guy. So that's how you can do. And of course this caching happens only on the GET request. You are safe as long as you are using POST request. So again, this is how you can handle if you are writing your AJAX using pure JavaScript. In case of jQuery, if you use it, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. jQuery will handle in the similar way for you as well. It will just append this timestamp after your request or URL, and then of course it will never be cached. So that's a caching issue. Now the important question is, or we have discussed how to connect to our server and bring back some data. For example, here dummy JSON, which was available on our server, and then of course our server means the localhost 8080. So the question is, can we make a request to any other domain in the world? So let's say our application is running here on localhost 8080. Can I connect to google.com or yahoo.com, any other server in the world, from using an AJAX request and then get the response from there? So that's an interesting part. And for security reasons, browsers will restrict you doing that. So of course you can only connect to your own server, or you can only send AJAX request to your own server, apart from few special cases which we will discuss. But yeah, as long as everything is normal, you are not trying to avoid the security issues via some other methods, or you are just trying to use some way around, I mean, your browser will restrict use or access to any other domain in the world. So how does browser defines whether this is this domain or some other domain? So there comes the same origin policy, which we have already, or the question I have already asked, I think in the HTML quiz, I believe. And here I said, okay, browser prevent access to different domains if you are trying to use or request using AJAX, and that is called the same origin policy. So it is implemented, of course, for the security purpose. Otherwise I can run my app here. I can query Google's database via google.com, and then my app will be the new search engine. Although in the backend, or I am requesting from Google, but I will be displaying data like my app is displaying, something like that. So of course that's a very trivial example, yeah, but in that case, I mean, you would be able to request any server in the world using Ajax, which is of course a security issue. So what is the same origin policy, or how does browser define that this is your origin and what you are requesting is different, so I will block it, so something like that. So browser creates, or browser defines one thing called origin, and it is nothing but a triple of, or triplet of, three different things: protocol, host, and port. So in this case, my protocol is of course HTTP, the host is this guy, and 8080 is the port. So as long as this origin is same in the request that I am sending via an Ajax, I am good. If anything in these three things changes, either protocol or host or port, and I am using that particular origin in the Ajax request, then browser will just block it. So for example here, I'm just gonna show from where I have taken it, which is on the Wikipedia same origin policy. So here you will see it properly. So again, let's say, and this is the some similar example that I gave you, but of course it was for some other purpose. But as far as same origin policy is concerned, which is applied to all the resources here, so there will be cookies, local storage or web storage or anything for that matter, they all use the same origin policy, and it is used for the security reason, and same it is used in the Ajax as well. So let's say your page is running at HTTP www.example.com, something like this. Now you can request, or you can create Ajax request, of course, if you are running JavaScript here. Now to which servers or to which domains you can send an Ajax request and you will be receiving the response, and to other domains, or which other domains where you cannot, related to this one. So of course, so we have the protocol HTTP, we have this particular domain www.example.com, and of course the port is not given here, it's port 80, because if it is port 80, browser will just remove 80 and just put the domain, because that's the default one understood by everybody. So here in the first example, we are requesting something from page2.html, and as long as the origin is same, which is HTTP, domain, and protocol, you are good. So of course that's why same protocol and host, so it's success. So your Ajax request will go through this case. What about this? So again, same thing, nothing after the protocol matters in case of same origin policy. You can put anything after this. Of course it is just checking for this purpose: the protocol, the domain or the host, and the port, these three things. That's what we said, right? These three things. Now what about this one? So of course this is some entirely no, this is good, because you are still going to www.example.com. you have the same protocol and of course the same port as well. Now only difference is here you are sending username password, because this server may require you to pass username password. That's it. Now what about this? So of course here, as I said, the default port, if you are not able to see here, is 80. So even if I put 80 here like this, browser will remove it, because everybody knows that if it is an 80 port, that means it's going to a web server. So that's how it removes it. So if it's not mentioned here, that means the port is 80. Now since here the port has changed, so of course your browser will just block request to here. Here the protocol has changed, we were using HTTP and now it's HTTPS, so of course it's a failure again. Here it's a different domain, or entirely host I would say, so it's a different subdomain neglected. Here as well, this is different subdomain. So of course exact match is required to www blah 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 example.com, something like that. Here another different domain, so it will change. And what about this? Because we are not showing 80 here, right? So if you try to pass 80, then it depends, but most of the browser will just accept it. So it will be success as far as I know. In case of Chrome, Firefox, I haven't checked this into IE, but I believe there as well it should be something similar. And there is one comment: Internet Explorer does not include the port in calculation of the origin, using the security zone in its place. And I have no idea what is security zone. I will go through this someday, or even you can go through this. Probably it's something different in IE. But as far as the better browsers are concerned, they will allow or restrict, and in this case they will allow. So that is the same origin policy, and depending on this you can connect to somebody, some server, or you cannot. So for example, I'm trying to connect to google.com, right? And let's say I search something there, something like this. So you see this your request, right? I'm just gonna copy, and then let's say if you wanna send a request to it here, we should be returning this entire page in our AJAX response, right? Well, that's what you may think. So instead of using localhost, we are trying to get there. That's it. And of course I'm gonna remove HTTP because my own page is not running on HTTP, so of course it will be the first issue. We are here, we kind of make it, refresh it. So of course after some seconds it will, okay, it did send a request to google.com with some parameters. Yep, GWS, RD, SSL, I don't know what was that. So it did send the request there, but you see in the console you have error, and it says XHR cannot load google.com, blah blah blah. No access control allow. Origin header is present on the requested resource. Origin, which is your app, is therefore not allowed access. So this is the standard message that you will get, and anytime you have this keyword access control allow origin, and if say no header is present, that means you are not allowed to go there. So why we are having it? Well, the reason is of course Google will not allow you to have access, first of all. So this is one thing. If you can manage this thing on their server, then probably you can do that, but still you need some way around from the UI as well. We will talk about that. But still, if everything is normal, you are not trying to do some or use some way around, so you are good, or you are not good actually. You will receive this error saying not allowed access, therefore not allowed access, or something like that. The reason is your domain or your origin is different than what you are requesting, and then we already saw what is same origin policy. So this is what would happen if something is like this is happening even on your server. There are chances that your app is running on somewhere, some other origin, your server is on some other origin. So this is how you will be having some issues in some cases. So that's how you can handle, try to make or try to request a resource which is running on the same origin. If not, then what are your options? Well, in that case you have two solutions. The first one is JSON-P, and it is only for receiving JSON data from your domain, from your different domain, or from your any other server. And why JSON only? Because it requires some processing on the JavaScript side, some unique logic to get past this AJAX security policy, the same origin policy. So that's why it is conditional that you have to receive JSON response from the server in order to get around with this same origin policy. So this is JSON-P. I'm not gonna discuss it right now, but I will give you an overview how does it handle. So actually what happens, well, before that I'm gonna give you another way of handling it, and the other one which is latest, it is called CORS. So it's a cross origin resource sharing. So again, JSON-P was a hack for AJAX, and it came at the same time as AJAX came, which was in 2005. So it was a hack around that. But CORS is properly implemented W3C standard for, of course, resource sharing across origins. There was that's why the name. Now, what it requires, of course, which is interesting. Now, whenever you request something from some other server, your browser sends one request header, which is origin, and this request header keeps or takes the name or your origin to the server wherever you are sending. On the server side, there is a logic to check the origin. On all of the servers, there will be logic to check the origin. If this origin matches to the requirement, then of course you will be getting this guy in the response, which is the reason why we were not allowed to have access to google.com from this example, right? Because it says no access control allow origin header is present in the requested resource. So that's why, I mean, you will send, or your browser will send origin, which will let the server know that, okay, from where this request is originating or coming from. And depending on that, either your server side, again remember this is Java code, even on the server side you can put this header in the response and set it to star, meaning you are saying, okay, I will allow access to everybody in the world. So that's why the wildcard. If you want to restrict request to some specific domains, then what you can do, you can say access control allow origin and just provide the comma separated whitelisted domains. That's it. And then in that case only access to these domains will be allowed, not everything else. And of course regarding this course, because every browser needs to send this guy origin, so IE8 and IE9 has partial support. I mean, it will work. IE10 has native support. All of the browsers have proper support for that, so it works as long as you are using IE8 or above and other modern browsers. So this is course. So of course this is standardized, so that's why the browser has implementation for origin. So for example here, let's just check if Google is requesting something out of the domain. There should be something. So the page is running at https www.google.com:443 because which is the default port for https. Now in these two, okay, so it is going at the same, or this AJAX request or this XHR is going to the same origins. Of course there won't be any change here. Let's see about this one. So yeah, which is good. So here it is going to some other domain, although it is also the google.com, but of course the entire origin is different because it's a different subdomain. So as long as it is going to a different origin, your browser will now send some origin parameter. Yep. And here it says, well, this request, whatever it is being originated from this origin, which is good. https www.google.com. Now of course it is google.com server here as well, and they must have implementation of what to or whom to allow, whom not to allow. So as long as it is originating from their own page, from Google search, you will see that in case of access control allow origin, they have said, okay, we will allow google.com. That's why your google.com can access this or can request to this guy as well, although this is not on the same origin as this page. But still, it was able to do because of this property which is coming in the response from the server. So server is explicitly allowing this request to properly process on the server side. So this is requirement even in case of JSONP. So for all these two solutions, one way around and one proper solution, your server has to approve your request, or server has to agree that, okay, you can access the resources available from that server. If server is not doing that, well, in that case you have no chances of connecting to any other server. So again, although these are not complete solution, well, these are solution actually. They are taking care of the security as well as giving some freedom for cross-domain AJAX request. But that's how your server has to say something like this, either put your domain or put some star, meaning every domain can access the resources on that particular server. So this is a must thing. And coming back to the JSONP, so how does that handle? Well, so what you are trying to do here is you are trying to request a resource from a different domain, assuming google.com allows you as well with some kind of this header parameter, response header like access control allow origin. In that case, what JSONP would do, or the framework behind JSONP would do, which is very well implemented in jQuery, in AngularJS, all other JavaScript libraries, For pure JavaScript, either you write yourself or download it from somewhere. There should be some framework for JSONP as well. Nice little single file. Now what it would do actually, so of course it won't be a request, your normal AJAX request, because otherwise it will be blocked. So what it does, you remember this script tag here? In case of script tags, you can put any URL here, and even from different domains, because that's how you use the jQuery or any other library from their own CDN. We will talk what is CDN, but still, that's how you handle it. Or that you can request any script from any domain as long as you are using script tags. So what does this JSONP do? Whenever you put some GET request like this, or anything like anything like that, what it does, it creates a script tag on the fly in your domain or in your document, put it there, and then instead of the src it puts your own URL here. So what the browser does, well, it says, oh, there is a new script tag, let me bring this script. Browser doesn't know whether you are getting a JSON data from the server side or some normal script. You get it, so browser will just bring that data from the server side wherever the server is, and then it will give it back to you. Now what it does actually, it will put a callback whenever the response is received from the server, and then execute it, and then it will return you the JSON data. So that's a very good, I would say, way around, because utilizing this feature of script, because your scripts can even connect to any domain in the world, so there is no same origin policy on the scripts one. So that's what, or that is the hack on JSONP, and that's why it's called JSON with pairing. So this is JSONP, and I think I have already explained something. Adding a script element on the page, the URL will be what you provide, and then it will be connecting to that server. Browser will think, okay, this will be a script, because browser doesn't know whether you are getting the JSON data from the server. It will be loaded and then executed, and then of course there will be callback, which will be of course called at the runtime, returning you the JSON response. So that's why only JSON can be handled, because there is a callback and it can execute only the JavaScript and JavaScript data or JavaScript object. So that's why a JSON object. So that's how JSONP works, but Course is better. There is no hack around that, so you can use it properly with the proper implementation from the browser, so which is good. So that was AJAX. Any doubt in this case? Otherwise we can move on talking around events. Okay, again, implementing AJAX using pure JavaScript is pain for the developers, and that's why it's always easier to use your jQuery or any other library or framework on JavaScript instead of writing too much code by yourself, because again you have to handle different things, you don't have too many options. Here when we see jQuery, then of course we will figure out how there are so many options available already implemented in jQuery for AJAX, and it becomes much more powerful in AJAX because everything is ready for you. Now here you have to create everything by scratch. So, but still you want to learn or you want to understand how AJAX requests are handled using the plain JavaScript, because that's what even jQuery would be doing, but yeah, in a better way, in a more efficient way than what you would do at this time. So, but still, that's what jQuery will be doing at the back end, but of course with more power. Now, I think I have just 1-2 slides, so let's cover cookies as well since we are here, and then we will start about events in some time. So what are cookies? Nothing, some data that you can store in your browser. Then what is the difference between storage or the web storage, these two guys, versus this cookie? So as I told you before when we were covering session or local storage, the session storage or the local storage, or combinedly we call them the web storage, does not send the content to the server. And what does that mean? Well, in case of cookies, okay, I don't have any cookie. Let's go to twitter.com. There will be more of the cookies. So here we have lots of cookies, right? Now, of course, you can see there are different parts of cookies. You can have, of course, there will be name of the cookie, the value inside that cookie, which is again a key value pair, just like you have in the local and the session storage. But we have some more things. Like this cookie has been set by google.com or page running on google.com. So of course there will be some call to google.com as well here, which I don't know why it would be. Probably my email is being used here and then it is trying to call google.com to verify something. That may be the case. Or probably to give me here, find the people you know, and then here it will try to import from my google.com or Gmail. So of course that's why the cookie is from the google.com here. This is important. This is from the twitter.com. So even if you have any backend experience, you will see there are, for example, in case of Java servlets, you can set cookies from the backend, and whenever you get response here on the UI, those cookies will be set in this section. So that's where you can set from the twitter.com server as well, or from the JavaScript page here as well. So again, so how to differentiate whether it was created via HTTP or just the page here. So wherever you see this right flags or checks for HTTP, that means this cookie was set via HTTP, meaning from the server. And mostly you will have something called session cookie as well, which is Twitter session. And this is the cookie in case of Twitter, which is handling your session or active session on the server side. So that's how your server knows from where the request is coming. So this is the session cookie, of course. So everything that you see with the HTTP click, that means these are set by servers. Everything else in this case are set by JavaScript here only. Now there is something called expires as well. So this cookie will expire on 2016, probably 2 years from now. So of course you can set expiry date of the cookies as well. And then of course this cookie is only for the session. So as long as session is there, the cookie will stay. If you log out, this will be wiped out from your system. Then of course there is something else which will really 10 years. Okay, I don't know why, what is that. Some more years and then few just today, just midnight, different things. One another thing to remember is these all times are in GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. The other one is secure, the last column, which says, okay, these cookies are only sent to the server if you are requesting on HTTPS. So yeah, Twitter is always running on HTTPS, so anything set via the server will be on HTTPS also. So if secure is enabled for that particular cookie, that means only interaction to the server will be on HTTPS, otherwise this cookie will not be sent to the server. So again, the difference between your web storage and cookies is your cookies can be set by the server as well as your JavaScript code here. Second thing, whenever you request something on the twitter.com, all the cookies on the twitter.com here defined via twitter.com will be sent to the server. And here it will be saying, okay, these two cookies have been defined from the server. But again, while sending everything which says twitter.com will be sent to the twitter.com. So now you can see if I send one request now, any request, it can be a page load or an AJAX request, all these cookies will also be sent to the server and they will be brought back in case of response. So now your response gets heavier, although you are just sending or you're just checking if something is updated on the server, some boolean thingy. But here if you see, all this extra data or overhead will also be sent to the server and will be part of the request as well as the response. So this is why if you are not trying to send anything to the server, just use web storage. In case of web storage, you just have key value pair, that's it. Like this, no other column, right? Because it is just stored on the UI. It is never sent to the server. It is not part of the request and response mechanism. It is just for the purpose of setting something here so that your UI can use later on. And of course we already talked about these two guys, session storage versus local storage. Here in this case cookies, we will talk how to set it using JavaScript. So again, it is data stored by browsers locally in the name value pair for each document, or I should say for each origin. Because if you use http twitter.com, which is of course different than https twitter.com, there will be another row here for inside cookies. So that's how it is. Then it is invented to address the issue of HTTP being stateless. So in case of HTTP, once the request is sent to the server and then response is received, that connection is closed. Next time your server will not know from where the request is coming. For example, you have logged into your Facebook or Twitter. Now you log in once, and then your server, and next time you go to home, you go to some other Twitter page or some other friends on Facebook, whatever, you do all this kind of thing. Your server never asks you to log in again for those requests. How? Although your HTTP is stateless, well, your server remembers that you have logged in before, but how to figure out from this browser and how to connect your browser to you or to your credentials. So this is the way these cookies are handled. Whenever you log in, there will be some session created in the memory of the server, and it will have ID, which is, in case of Twitter, is this some alphanumeric value. Now this ID is for your session which is running on the server side, and here it will put ID on your browser window. So next time a request goes, it will have this cookie along with the request, and then server will take out this ID, get the instance of your session from the server memory somewhere, and then if it is available, that means you are logged in, your session is active, just process the request. If it is not, it will throw you the login page. So that's how the logins or entire sessions are maintained on the server side using cookies. Here, this is not a password, this is not a username, it is just an ID of your session which is running on the server memory. That's it. So that's how HTTP sessions are being handled. And then of course maximum size is just 4 KB of data that you can put it here. Of course there is no memory size on the web storage, so you can put anything there. Now how to put some cookies. So of course the way to do it is using document.cookie, and you set one long string separated by semicolons. So what are those? So first one is the key value pair, separated by of course equals to. The next one is expiration date, which has to be the GMT. Next one is the path. Well, I didn't explain the path actually. So here you see the root path. If you want to send this HTTP cookie or any cookie on twitter.com on different paths, so for example if I go to notification here, and you just want to send this cookie only for the notification request, not everybody, then just set the path to i/notification in this case. Right now, since you have mentioned, or Twitter has mentioned, for every request send this cookie, so that's why they have put the root path. So you can configure that path as well. The domain that you want to get associated with that, if you don't do, it will be just your own domain. And from JavaScript you cannot do something like set it on the behalf of google.com, so there's not much to do with the domain. Now secure, so of course you can request whether you want to send this cookie only on HTTPS connections or not. So of course you can do secure. Domain, no one cares, because you cannot set google.com here, it will be just ignored. So why do we even look into domain? The browser will automatically set it wherever or whatever JavaScript is running on particular domain, so you don't have to do that one. Now again, what you can do, how to create the current date for the expiration. Well, and again, as I said, it has to be the GMT string, because for some reason they just added GMT format there, and that's the standard now. So again, you can create date using new date, which is an object in JavaScript, and then you can do set time. So this is the current time that you get, and let's say you want to set some days in future the expiry date, so you can put so this is just one logic. So here I'm converting the date, number of days in future. So let's say this cookie should expire 2 days after now, so 2 days into those many seconds, milliseconds in a day. So of course you are converting days into milliseconds, just add it, and this date, get the GMT string, and then just set it on the document.cookie, you will start having one cookie now. And again, your path, you are saying make it available to all the requests on this page. So that's very easy. So if we just try to do it something like this, so if you don't put the expiry, it is for the session, and as soon as the browser is closed, this is wiped out. So for example, or not the browser, the window is closed, this will be wiped out. So for example, I have this, I have just key and some value. Of course, value is some date, but who cares? There is no expiry header, there is no domain, no secure, no path, nothing. It's a very key value. That's it. Now, of course, this has been set. You can go to resources, and you will see the last visit, the value here, whatever I put. Since I didn't give the domain, so of course domain is localhost. The path, since I didn't give any path, so it will put wherever the JavaScript is running. And then of course it's session because I didn't give the expiry as well. So as long as I clear it, it will be here. The size is just number of characters in both of them. It is not set by servers. Of course, no click for the HTTP, and I didn't ask for secure as well. So everything is very simple in this case. Now, for example, here, what we'll be doing is, let's just create new date. So of course we have date object. If you want to see, you can see it here. Now of course this is current time compared to GMT. Sorry, this is ET, not GMT. Now what we want is, we want to set some expiry date in future. So let's say 2 days from now. So in the same formula, I will just put 2 days here. So this is now, I have set future time to this date, and then I can use this to set a cookie. Just like this. So this cookie has been set, and then if I go to resources, you will see a username, the value, the domain, the path, and it expires on 15th of July, 2 days from now at the same time. Of course, it's a GMT string now, right? So that's why the size is again 15 bytes, because it's all 15 characters probably. Oh, not here, 15 characters. So that's all. If you set something from HTTP, this guy will be clicked. And if you set some HTTP from, and this, yeah, you can also make something secure. So let's make it like this. And I don't think it will be made secure. The reason is I'm not running on HTTPS this page. So there's no chance this cookie will be placed on your system. Like this. Let me try it again. Yep, no chance. You ask for secure, you are not running on HTTPS, get lost. Browser will not even put it there. This is good. So here you could put it. So again, to be on HTTP, so let's say you want to be secure and you want to be super awesome and you want to set the domain as well. I don't know. Google.com, just try, and then instead of here, let's say Twitter.com. Instead of here, you want to put it here. Let's see what happens. Where is date? Okay, there is too much to work. Copy this. So now I try to set this. Let's see if we can send on someone else's behalf. So yep, as long as we are running on twitter.com, since we have executed it on console on twitter.com, so of course you are able to set it. Twitter.com, blah blah blah. It is also on the secure because we asked for HTTPS, and it is running on HTTPS. Can we set it assuming it's a google.com? Let's go there. Nope, not possible. So we try to change to google.com, but it says mind your business. You are not running your page on google.com, so you cannot set something on google.com from the page running on twitter.com. So of course this is also taken care of. Okay, all the cookies. Again, setting or handling this particular code many times, it may be hard. So of course, this is what I have written, and most of you will find it online as well. So of course, everybody tries to write two methods. So one is get cookie value. You pass the name of the cookie, and this will just figure out and return you the cookie value. So you can just ask something like this. Again, you can ask for document.cookie, and then it will give you all the cookies on this domain. What are these cookies? You see all these cookies. Now how to figure out? Well, just split on this guy. So that's what we are doing, splitting. So of course it will be an array. So of course all the cookies will be in array now. And then you can just loop over that, check the name, whatever you have, return the value, otherwise return the null. So that's a get cookie value. And similarly, you can have something called set cookie value, where you are asking for name, value, and number of days to expire. The same logic, do that, calculate the date if it is some value, and then set the cookie. So these are two helper functions, so that you don't have to write this logic again and again for handling cookies. You can just copy paste these two functions, and every time you want to get something from the cookie, just use get cookie value. You will get either the value or null. Or if you want to set something, just call this helper function, and then you will be able to set cookie. So that's how easy it is. And then of course this is not the end. I will give you 10 minutes to go through any of these functions, cookie, some issues with this, some questions on cookies or Ajax, and then after that at 7:40 we will start talking about, what was that, events. Or somewhere, yeah. So we'll talk about events, which should be nothing more than half an hour. Yeah, some 10 slides or something. So yeah, 10 minutes from now. Well, let's have 13 minutes. We'll come back at 17:45. Sorry, 7:45. Okay guys, so let's start talking about events now, or especially the JavaScript events and different type of events, how to prepare your application for handling those events, because you have to ask the browser to execute some function when some particular event occurs. So we'll figure out how to do all of these things in this session. So again, why do you need events? So well, if you don't have any events, then probably you are having just a static page, and then of course I haven't seen any website without having some sort of event handler for anything. Even when you load something, that's an event. The window.onload, right? So that's nothing is possible without events. And of course, more and more you use, you are trying to add interactivity to your HTML pages and making them entirely dynamic in nature. So that's how you can have it. And then of course the only way to add events is using JavaScript. Now what is event? Well, a way for JavaScript to know which functions to execute and when to execute. So an event occurs whenever you click something, when you mouse over something, when some object loads, even the window, whenever your page refreshes, the first time your window is getting prepared, that's also an onload event. And even we saw with the Ajax that there is something called on ready state change event. So everything most uniquely which starts with the word or property on that object which starts with the prefix on, that 99% in cases there may be event. So an event. So of course an event can be anything, can be performed with your mouse or as well as keyboard, or even the browser refresh or Ajax call, anything. Now again, so there are some DOM events like click, mouse over, key press, submit, mouse move, mouse down, all these different things, right click, whatever. Then there are some window events as well, like resizing the browser, or sorry, browser window, then also it's an event. And there are others as well, like load or onload, ready state change, that we have already seen in Ajax. So of course there are lots of other events as well, but we will go through how to set event handlers for this, any event, how to remove it, how to trigger the events manually. So we'll learn how to do all this. So of course, for example, here in this small example, this is using some event or executing something on whenever I am doing the mouse over, then mouse over on this item, or if I click here, then of course something else, so which is alerting me. So again, these are different events, and what I did here is just I use event binding and then reference, got a reference to a function and then pass it to the event handler. That's it. That's what I did, and that's what we will learn. So again, there are lots of DOM events. So if you go to this reference, mostly they will start with the prefix on, like all the mouse events, which are kind of on click, double click, mouse down, enter, leave, move, mouse over, mouse out, mouse up, so many things. Keyboard events, frame or even object events like on load, on resize, on scroll, form events as well. What you do in the form, for example, submit, if you select something, if that input is having focus, like label input, select text area button, whenever they receive focus, this event is fired. On change, if some values change in input, select or text area, then also this is fired. On blur, when it loses focus, so whoever can get focus can lose focus as well, right? So this is on blur. So different type of events, and of course we'll talk about this bubbling thing and even entire event object. But yeah, these are pretty much the events that you can have in your browser, and then you can bind event handlers. So event handlers are just the functions or JavaScript functions that you are asking your browser to execute whenever that event is occurring. So of course there are lots of DOM events that we have seen, and the most important thing about JavaScript events is, I mean, this is the most notorious cross-browser issue, because every browser has its own way of implementing this mechanism or events. And throughout this few, probably 9 to 10 slides, we will discuss how to handle in different browsers, especially older IE versions and even the current IE versions in few cases. It's all mess. So most of the times you normally don't bind even using pure JavaScript. You usually go with the easy route, which is using jQuery or any other such DOM manipulation library. So, but still you have to know how to use pure JavaScript to do that for you. So that's what we'll see. The first one is of course the event handlers, or how to bind event handlers to a particular HTML or the DOM element. Now, for example, here, the first one is using an attribute directly on the HTML tag. So for example, in this button we are saying, okay, whenever somebody clicks on this one, so we are asking, or we have put the attribute as the on click here, and we are asking whenever someone clicks on this button, execute this function. So of course this function has to be in your JavaScript somewhere, and then that function will be executed. Now on click, well, in this case you can also write some sort of JavaScript, and then in this case it will parse that JavaScript and execute that. So it is here what you're asking is alert thanks whenever you click this. So in case of HTML, or whenever the application runs with this too, it will do the necessary things. So let's talk about this in Plunker. Since I don't want to show two different screens, I will just put one script tag here and write all the JavaScript here only, so that I don't have to switch between multiple files. So this is one way. So I have that. So what we want is, let's say this one. So we have one HTML element, and then of course we need to have click button or a function click button or something, and we'll just say, okay, whenever you execute it, log it. Very simple, right? Run it, see the log or the console. So what we did, when you click this one, on click, just execute this function, whatever it is, click, and then you see this click click click. Okay, very simple, easiest way to bind event handlers using the attribute on the HTML. But again, there are some cons as well, or disadvantages. So what are the advantages? First of all, simple and inline. So this is advantage as well as disadvantage. This guy, now you are messing up your HTML with JavaScript, which is not a good practice. So of course there are some other limitations as well. So, or there are benefits of other methods which supersede this guy, which is very simple. So again, this is the way. What about if you want to access the element which have been clicked inside this function? So in that case, if you are using something like this, you have to pass a keyword this here, because you want to access where you have, on which element you have clicked. So just pass this keyword, and here you can handle, let's call it reference or something. In that case you can, let's try to console it or log it. So if you click it, then of course you see this HTML thing. So since you are passing this, you have a reference to that one as well. If you want to access the dir or the DOM element part, then you can do that as well. So now this is a button, and these are all the properties on that button, which is a DOM element, not the HTML tag. So again, and again you can see there are so many properties with this, all this on. These are all the event handlers, and right now they are all empty because you haven't specified any event handler there. There should be something for the click because you said so, right? On click, and that's what it is. Whenever you click, execute the function. It should be making a call to your function here somewhere. Yeah, it's internal, but yeah, it is making a call to a function ultimately, click button. So that's why only this guy is set, everything else is null, because you are only handling for that particular event. This is very easy. Now since you got a reference to the DOM element here, ref, you can apply all those methods like we already discussed in case of DOM or document or element API. So yep, that's what you can do. Let's try to do something with this button. Let's change the content to clicked, change the background color, and then color as well, since we have the reference of this item, right? That's what we will do. Whenever you click it, it will be turned into clicked. We are trying to change the color using the style property on that element, because again this is a DOM element, so we can use that API, some color and some font color as well. So something like this. Of course that has been changed to clicked. You have some color, and then of course you have some background color as well, and then yep, we are printing or we are logging the object itself. So everything can be done as long as you have reference to this. So that's one way, easiest way to use an attribute or event attribute on the HTML tag, and then you don't have to do anything else on this part. Now what is the other way, or a little better way? So in this case, of course, just get rid of that JavaScript thingy out of the HTML and put it somewhere else. So here we are just saying ID. So we have set some attribute ID so that we can identify this guy or this button from JavaScript code. And how to do that? Well, you already know, document.getElementById. by ID. So we can refer to this DOM, right? And then here we are using event as the DOM element property. So this is another way where we can handle it. So we can have dot on and whatever event that you want, on mouse over, on key press, key up, on load, on whatever. In this case we are saying on click, and we are assigning a function directly here. So what we are doing, actually you have already seen here. When I click, you see all these properties on, right? And most of them, or all of them except one, is null. So that's what we are saying. We are directly assigning function to one of this property. So that's what we are doing. On click, just assign a event handler. And here one better feature is you get access to that event object itself, and which is very helpful. We will see. So let me just copy paste. It's here. Click me or something, right? And then what we are doing, some thing here. Let me just get rid of, make it proper. So what we have, so yep, it's cleaned up now. Why didn't I get, okay, so it was here. I have put two comments here. So this is the other way via assigning a function directly onto the property, which is an event type, onto the document.getElementId, meaning the element itself. But the benefit of this approach versus the previous one is we are not writing JavaScript or referencing JavaScript from your HTML, so we are still keeping these two separate. Now we want to see what is this event object that we have access to, log it. What is the inner edge? So again, there is this keyword that you can use inside this. And if you remember this, if you have a function on a property of an object, so this is of course an element object, so this will refer to that element, right? So that's why we can use this directly here, and then we will always refer to the element that was clicked, which is good, one more helpful thing. And then we are doing the same thing that we were doing in the previous case, but now we have more control. We have this, and of course we have access to event as well. And let's see what is the event object actually. So just click here, you will see the first thing it printed was mouse event, which is from line number 15. We are trying to print that event object. The second one is just print its own inner HTML, which is clicked, or before clicking it was click me, and then we change the inner HTML to click. So that's right. So now expand this guy and see. Okay, so this event object is not that small, it's pretty large actually. And then you have access to so many properties here on the event object, saying alt key, bubbles, button, different things. What is the position of mouse when you clicked it, 34, 95, something, some screen X, screen Y. You can get all these things, even the type X, Y. Now what is the benefit of having access to this event guy? So in one case, let's say if you want to check whether when user is clicking this button, is he or has he pressed the control button or the alt button or something like that. So for example, right now I am clicking here while keeping the control button pressed on the keyboard, and if I click something like this mouse event, and there will be control property, ctrl key somewhere here. So it is true now. If I use Alt, so right now Alt key is false, right? Next time when I click, I will try to, okay, what I will do, I will press Alt key on the keyboard and click it again. And in that case, your Alt key attribute will be true. So of course, you can also get this type of values from your keyboard for some special keys, of course. For all others, there is which is right now saying left button of the mouse or the right button of the mouse. So there is something regarding which. So we can handle all these different things. And I think this meta key, is it the shift key in Windows? Looks like. Nope, it is something else. Probably it belongs to Mac or maybe something else. Anyways, so you can have access to all this as long as you are having an event which will be passed to you or to your function whenever you click or whenever you perform that event. So we are good here. Now what are the benefits of this? Well, it's again simple and popular as well. Popular because it's good practice to separate your JavaScript from your HTML, and then again your HTML markup is free of any JavaScript code. Now what is the drawback here? So what if, let's say, I want to pass or I want to attach two different event handlers on the same event? You cannot do that in this case because this is a property. As long as you try to use the same property and assign a different function, the previous function will be overridden, right? Because it's a single property, it can have only one value, just like your object key value pair in case of JavaScript objects. So this is the reason, well, you cannot have multiple event handlers for the same event on the same element. So of course there should be some another approach, which is the best one out of these three. And that one is, of course, using the event target interface. The name is, I don't know why they come up with such name, but it's very easy. So again, what is the event target? So it's a DOM interface, again some sort of functions implemented by objects that can receive DOM events and have listener on them. So again, some cool guy developed this, so some cool names, listeners, all these things. You may have element, blah blah blah, are the most common event targets. Of course, you see your element is here, so you can put elements like this as well, even on the document window or even on XHR you can have something like this. We will just see onto that one. So this is the event target, and there are three functions available. Add event listeners, which is used to register an event handler on the event target, which can be element or document or window or etc. And then you can also use remove event listener to remove an event listener from the event target, so that's also possible. If you want to manually trigger some event, then it is called the dispatch event. You just pass the event type, that's it. So these three very helpful. Now the problem is IE6 and 8, they have their own implementation, they don't know these functions. So in that case you have to fall back to, or you have to be prepared with the cross-browser issue while using this ones. So yeah, there you will be using attach event for having this effect, detach event for having here, and then fire event for dispatch event. So again, this is what you will have in all the modern browsers, even IE9 and higher, and this is what you will have in IE6 and 8. So if you are trying to write event handler via this method in the pure JavaScript, you have to write for both of them. Let's try to just learn the first way using the add event listener. So what do we have here? So we say, okay, the target dot add event listener, and it has three arguments. The first one is of course the event type, string, just saying what do you want, click, key press, mouse over, all these different event types. And again, you remember this has no on prefix, because on prefix is used only on the properties. Here you are just saying event type. Now the listener, which is a function or a callback, so you can pass it here. The third one is an optional, which is use capture. Right now I will describe you this in detail, probably 4 slides from now, but right now just pass false always, and I will also discuss why false always. So this is a boolean and it's optional. If you don't use it, it is false by default. So what we do here, we get the reference to the element first, which is again same thing, document.getElement by ID, like this, and then we call this method add event listener on that element, which is again a DOM element. We pass the event type, click, and then pass the event handler, which is again a function, and here we are just having an event object from outside, which is good. We have access to this as well, which will allow us to access the element itself. All good. So let's just execute this, or why execute? I mean, we can just convert whatever we have into this format. So we have this, we don't want to have this one. What we'll be doing is instead add event listener. Okay, this one. Pass the event type, which is, let's say, click. The function, we have it here. False is the third parameter. Close this guy. So we have done this one. The same, we didn't do anything different. We have the same body of this function. We are having access to events, which is good. We have access to this as well, which is the same element. So good. Look now. So we have just used the add event listener instead of just directly using the property there. Now if you click, same thing would happen, right? No difference. So as far as the body is concerned, it's the same. It's the way we are adding this event listener which is different. So that's how we can do it. Now what is the benefit of this approach using the previous one? First of all, okay, before that, go to the event types, and then you will see different types of events, like all this. These are just the names that you have. You can directly put, few of them are not implemented in all of the browsers, so be prepared for that. But yeah, for example, this double click, they're all implemented since long time. But yeah, there are lots of events. There are some non-standard events, something which are probably just on the Mozilla specific, because this site is Mozilla Foundation. But yeah, all above are proper events or event types which are supported in most of the browsers. Now what is the benefit of using add event listener? Well, there's one benefit. So in the previous case we saw, where was it here? If we try to bind multiple event handlers for the same event on the same element, we cannot do using this approach. But here we can do that. If you have any other function, just write one more line, element.add event listener, click some other function, false, and it will be added. And what would be the order of execution? The order of addition. So something like, I have this, right? Let me do. So here I will just say something like console.log first one, because it is the first event handler that I'm binding. Somewhere I'm binding again something else like this. Same event, same element, different functions or different event handlers. We can do that, and when I click it, you will see this will maintain the order in which they were bound on this element. So yeah, that can also be done, and this is the benefit. And why it is useful, so for example, you are using some jQuery plugin, let's say date selector or something, right? And then what it would do internally is it will bind an event handler for click event into a particular text box or something. Whenever you go there, click there, it will show you the date selector or the calendar or whatever you call it. Now for some reason you also want to bind some click event for that particular input box doing something else. Now with this approach only, you can bind multiple event handlers. So that's how even all the plugins are possible. Most of the plugins are possible, because if you try to do with the previous approach, well, your plugin will bind something like using this, and then you will override it, so your plugin will not work. So that's why this is much better approach, and again executed in order. So that's the adding event listeners. The next one is of course removing event listener. So if you have already added it, you can remove it again. So the same type of arguments in the remove event listener function, the type of the event that you want to remove, what was the listener, just pass its reference, and then the last one is again use capture, make it false. Again, it is for event propagation. We will talk about that. So again, you define some listener, right? I have put this function outside now. You got a reference to the div, which is using get element by ID. You edit the event listener, you set click, you pass the reference to this function which is listener, false, of course, the last one, and then after some time you decided, okay, just remove this listener, it's no longer needed. So just remove listener, same type, same thing, and then this listener will be removed from the click handler on this div element here. Okay, so that's again easier. Any doubt? Okay, so that's how you can add and remove event listeners, which is good. What if you would try to execute this event handler programmatically? So right now, let's say for some reason I want to programmatically mimic that somebody has clicked this element. How can I do that? Because right now I have just bound the event handler on the click event, and it's now onto the user, and go onto this button and click, then only this will be executed. In some cases your program, your application may require a event to trigger, and you would want to do that programmatically. So how to do that? Well, we have third function for that, which is dispatch event. Now it is complicated in case of JavaScript. If you try to write this from the JavaScript, plain JavaScript, what is the complicated thing here? So of course you have the target, which is your element, and you use dispatch event, which is kind of triggering an event programmatically, and then you pass the event object. Now this event object is monstrous. Why? The reason is, let's see here. So here we said, okay, get the element reference, use the add event listener, right? We said, okay, we have set up some event listener which is just alerting clicked, something like that. So this is the event listener that we have added to this C box or something. Now we have another function which we'll be calling later on to mimic a trigger of click event on this C box. That's it. Now if you don't do that, then of course you have to wait for user to go and click on this C box. Now you programmatically want to trigger this event, which is the click event, on this object. So how to do that? Well, what you have to do, first of all, you have to figure out what type of object this click guy represent. So if you remember few things or few examples back, when I clicked there, the type of that object was mouse event, right? So you have to create an object of mouse event using document.create event, and then you have to initialize this mouse event object using this method and all these parameters, which even I don't know what this guy is representing what, because every time I have to go there I have to look into reference, a long list of parameters that you have to pass. I know of course the first one, which is the type of the event or type of the mouse event, which is click. There are others as well, like scroll or left click, right click, double click. Well, click is left click actually, and few different things. So again, this is the mess that I was talking about. You have to remember or reference to Mozilla Developer Network, or you have to figure out what parameters to pass, what values to pass, different things. Once you have that, then you are good. Then what you do, you just get a reference to the element using any of the get element function, and just say dispatch event and this event object that you have created. So what JavaScript will do, it will find out this guy, which is your element, and then dispatch or execute or trigger this event onto this box. If there was an event handler for click already attached on CB, it will be executed. So that's what you can do here. So let's have an example of this one. Nothing, just a copy paste. Now let's have the click button. Yeah, dispatch event of null. Okay, so that is what happened here. Let's comment out this. So far what we did, we said, okay, bind an event handler for the click event on this button, whenever it executes, alert. That's it. So if I click it, yep, I see the alert box. That is what I have asked the JavaScript to do. Now for some reason I want to execute this click or trigger this click event programmatically, so that's what we are doing here now. So that's what happening. I mean, I'm just, the page is refreshing, and then yep, you see the event is fired automatically, and then you are seeing this like this, automatic. I didn't click on that one because we are using dispatch event, which is a method to trigger an event on an object programmatically using JavaScript. So that can also be done using dispatch event. Any doubt here? So yeah, this is all we have for the events, except understanding what is this last parameter, use capture. It was there, right, in case of add event listener as well as remove event listener. So let's talk about this use capture now. So it is related to event propagation. So what is that? So it comes into picture when you have some sort of this structure, which you will be having in all of your pages, meaning you have some parent element and you have some child element or ancestor and descendant. Now we have bound, or we have attached an event listener on click event on div2, and we have attached an event listener for the click event on div1 as well. So we have click event listener for both of this, right? Something like this. We said, okay, document.get element by div, get element by id div1, add event listener for the click event, and print something like this. That's what we are doing. For the next one, div2, we are saying the same thing, but we are doing something else, of course. Now, if I execute, or if I click on the blue area, just for reference, if I click on the blue area, then of course we are sure that this is the territory of div1, and only div1's event listener will be executed. No, not this one, because this is div1. Now, what about here? If I click here, which is also the territory of div2 as well as div1, because your mouse is inside div1 at this time. So what to execute first, div1's event handler or div2's event handler? So that's the contention. So let's try and see what is happening here. Before that, I need this structure. I'm lazy, so I will copy it from my own code. Something like this, and let's remove the previous JavaScript, just put it here. Okay, something like this. Forget about using style, that's a bad practice, blah blah blah, everything. This is not application, just test, so we are good. Now I'm just gonna do this, and what it would do, actually, it will bind event handlers on two different objects, and there has to be name for this, right? So it looks like there is no ID, so let's put ID div1 div2. So we have this now. So what we did, we created a small snippet of HTML having a parent, and then inside that we have a child div, two divs, and we are calling div1 outside, div2 inside. Now using JavaScript event handling mechanism, we added event handlers for both of them on the same event, but of course doing something else. The first one will print div1 is clicked, second one will print div2 is clicked if you click on any one of these items. So as I said, as long as I am on the blue area, of course we are sure that only div1's part is visible, so only this one will be executed, right? So that's what you see, div1 is clicked. Now the problem is what happens when I click on the middle area, because this is the territory of the div2 as well as div1. So let's see what happens in case of Chrome. So it says, okay, div2 is clicked first and then div1 is clicked because you are here. So your Chrome says make sure that the children execute first and then parent, right? That is what would happen every time. div2 and div1, children first and then the parent, children first and then the parent. So this is the way we have it. Now, is there a way to execute div1 first and then div2? If we click here, yes, there is. But before that, understand why do we have this contention. So the reason is, back in the time there were only two browsers, Netscape and IE. So of course they didn't agree on this silly thing, and they said, or Netscape said, okay, according to Netscape, event on div1 should take place first, and hence event handler of div1 should be fired first, and then your event propagation should move down the DOM structure, and they call it event capturing. So this is important, and that's what Netscape said back in 1990s somewhere. Microsoft says again, no, event on div2 takes place first, so we will fire div2 event handlers first, and then it should move upwards in the DOM structure, and this is called event bubbling. So this is the reason. Two stupid guys, they fought on a silly thing, and now W3C has to come with a different approach, saying, okay, screw both of you. We will allow browsers to have both the features, event capturing as well as event bubbling. Event capturing is when event propagation executes event for the parent first and then for the children, and event bubbling is just reverse, execute the div2 first and then go to div1. So W3C says, okay, we will give you one parameter which is use capture, just make it true and false, and depending on that, either the execution will be in this order or in this order. So now the question is, why do we always say false into that one? The reason is Netscape is no longer here. IE is still there. We want to support IE. So in that case, we go with the IE's route. So we say use capture the Boolean parameter, the last one, to false, and that's what we do. If we make it work other way, then of course it will be behaving different way. So something like we have here, and let's make it true instead of false. So previously, when it was false, we were using the bubbling phase, or we were executing these events in the bubbling manner, event bubbling phase, where div2 was executing first and then div1. If you click here, now since we have made it to true, div1 is clicked first and then div2. So this is just reverse, and that's how you can handle any of the feature. But why do we have only false? The reason is IE is still here, Netscape no longer, so nobody cares about event capturing. But for some reason, if you want, you can just set it to true. If you set it to true, something weird would happen in IE. Most of the times you don't care which execute first, but in some cases you might. If something on this div1 processing depends on what you did here, so you can do that one as well. Now since we are here, so let's say we want to stop this propagation at any moment, right? So for example, when I click here, just click only on this one and stop propagating this event on to other elements on top of this. So for that we have this stop propagation as well, and this is available on the event object. Oh, so I am not passing event object here. I just passed event object here, because every handler can have the event object argument, right? Now what you want to do here, since these two are, let's make it false to understand better. So we have set this to false. When I click here, of course it will be event bubbling phase, meaning child will be executed first and then parent will execute. So that's why you will see div2 and div1 again, right? But what you want here, whenever you click on div2, you just want to stop that event propagation to the parent. In that case, in the div2, you can go there and say event dot stop propagation, propagation, really, like this. Now what would happen, it will just stop propagation here only, and then it will not propagate to the parent, and of course no parent execution will happen because you are stopping event to go anywhere except here. So I click it, only div2 is clicked, and the event is stopped here only, and it is not propagating up in the DOM tree. So yep, this is your div, or that's how you can say it, where to stop propagation. So that's also possible now at the current level or the current item. And that's it. That's about the events. So we have understood how to add event handlers. Of course, we have three ways: using attribute, using element property on the DOM, or using the better approach, the interfacing, and then of course these different methods. Then we saw different methods, how to use them. Also this use capture, which we have discussed in the very end, which is handling the event propagation. And there are two ways: event capturing, where you fire the event handler of the parent first and then child, so you are moving from up to bottom or top to down in the DOM tree. The next one is the event bubbling, which fires event handler of the child first and then moves up in the DOM tree. So these two are there, and using this true false you can handle it. Okay, I have a question. What happens when you set true on parent but false on the child, or vice versa? Let's try. First of all, just remove this propagation, otherwise. So right now, if you click here, div2, div1, right, because they are false. Let's make one in the true. Now let's do it. And then of course div1 is clicked first because you have set true on the parent. So the flow is determined from the parent, right? So div1 is clicked now, and that's why it is now in the capturing phase. What if you do the reverse? So here, since you are making sure that your parent here is false, then of course it will not be executed in the capturing, it will be executed in the bubbling phase. So the parent holds the key. The child, you are just passing for the sake of passing an argument. But if you change something on the parent without changing anything here, that will control the total bubbling or capturing phase. Yep. Any other question? So yep, there is one more, I think. So if both are true, d1 and d2 will be output. Yeah, same thing. Or even if the parent is true, then also d1 and d2 will be the output. But yeah, just to avoid all this, always use false so that you don't have to write too many things for different browsers. So this is it, and that's where we have ended our JavaScript on time, although after 2 days out of schedule, but still. So if you have any question, let me know. On Monday, which is tomorrow, on Tuesday, yeah, on Tuesday you will be having JavaScript quiz. So we have covered, and this is the this is the largest session in this whole training, the JavaScript, probably some 80 odd slides covering so many things, entire core JavaScript, different things, and then of course the DOM API, the DOM manipulation, the event API, and of course the most important, Ajax. Any question? Otherwise, okay, so there is one question of what would be the total duration of .NET training. Usually I have found, Naren takes only 1 day, probably an hour and a half or 2 hours straight, and that's it. That's his training. For me, I like to take 2 days. So two different sessions of 2 hours, so that would be different. Again, I will talk to Naren in the morning or afternoon tomorrow, and then depending on his response I will let you know what we're gonna cover tomorrow. Okay, because if he is not able to take the backend, then I will have to start using jQuery or talking about jQuery. If he takes tomorrow, then I will also take backend. So that depends on his response. Okay, so if you don't have any question, we can sign off from today, and then join again tomorrow at 6:30 Eastern. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye bye.